You know, I'll ask you this. The Pan-African movement
Mhm.
has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
It hasn't achieved its goals at all.
Mhm.
Okay. Why? What is the issue stopping it from making progress?
Well, number one, Pan-Africanism is political.
Okay.
It's political.
Okay.
And it's hard to get any type of political traction when you're on two different sides of the globe.
Okay.
It's hard to get any political traction when one African nation is ruled by France and the other is ruled by Britain. It's hard to get any type of political things done when there's colonial borders, when you can't fly from one African country to another African country. You have to fly to Europe to fly to another African country. How do you get anything politically done? Politically or economically done? There's no free trade movement within Africa. These things are not done, my brother, by accident. They are not done so there could not be an African uprising against the colonial masters. So this is why these Pan-African movements don't rise. I don't consider myself a Pan-African.
Neither do
I
I.
consider myself to be proud to be African.
Okay.
I am a proud African. I'm proud of my history, but I am under the belief that wise minds think alike and wise minds stick together. So if you and I are on the same wavelength, we're brothers. If we have two different ways of thinking and two different ways of going about accomplishing our goal, then we're not on the same level. But if we are both about changing the narrative, bringing diversity and inclusion into the world and education into the world, we're going to connect more closer.
Yeah.
Does that not mean that one can't learn from the other? Absolutely, we still can. But for us to be on the same wavelength, we got to have the same mind state. The Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference is when all of these European nations, Britain, Portugal, Spain, France,
Germany,
Belgium, they all got together and sat down and said, listen, all the wealth is in Africa. 1884 and 1885. Sat down, not a single African was there. And they said, okay, Spain, you already have troops here. You take this land. France, you take this land, and so on and so forth. You take this land, this part of Africa. And they went about carving up Africa like a pie, divided it amongst themselves, what parts they want, and how they would trade amongst each other the African resources. Why did they do this? Because the resource at the time, the 14th, 13th, and 1400s, keep that in your mind as a very key time when you started to see this white supremacist mentality started to develop. There was a man by the name of Mansa Musa. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, sure.
Mansa Musa, who was considered to be the richest man of the AD period. Mansa Musa traveled across Egypt and he was giving away millions in gold to the poor. He wasn't giving it to the rich people. He was giving it to the poor. Now think about what this does, my brother. When you think about what an economy is, the economy is the flow of money coming from businesses, rich, wealthy businesses who are owned by rich, wealthy men to the people. You understand? That's what an economy is about. Mansa Musa, when he gave away millions of gold to the poor in Egypt, he bankrupted the economy because now the money is not flowing from the rich, wealthy companies. Now the money is flowing within the poor and impoverished people.
Okay.
So it bankrupted their economy for 12 to 15 years. This news spread throughout the Middle East. And there was an article that was released of this man holding this gold globe in his hand with a cavalry of thousands of warriors with him on horseback. And this spread within the Arab nations, then spread to Europe. The Europeans at this time, they knew about Europe. I mean, they knew about Egypt because they had already made incursions into Europe. And they knew about Kush because they already had interaction with Kush as well. But they did not know what was happening in Western Africa, Western and Central South Africa just yet. So now as we see 1300s, the Black Death, the bubonic plague, which you're familiar with, you know your Eurocentric history. The Little Ice Age, which was the coldest time, which caused crop failure. Many died in Europe because of this. The Black Death killed millions, over 60 million people. Okay, so you got crop failure, Black Death, or bubonic plague, whatever you want to call it. And you also have the 100 Years' War between the French and the British. So they have internal conflict in Europe, killing each other. They have Black Death, coldest time in their history. Crop failure, famine, all of these things happening. This is when you start to see mercenaries get dispersed to Western Africa, Northern Africa, Southern Africa, South India, and even landed in the Caribbean islands and as well as the Americas. These mercenaries' job was to send out these people to go and pillage and subjugate these lands and make them a European nation under them. Find the resources, find the wealth, find the secrets, try to create trade. But the real goal was to manipulate and dominate these African nations. And they started one small African tribe after the other. And then they took care of the bigger kingdoms after they took one small tribe after the other. So this is how this started to happen in the 1300s, the 1400s, where Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and all of these other mercenaries that you hear about who are called explorers. That's what their job was to do, was to go find gold, go find wealth, or to go find resources and bring them back to Europe, them to the
that's been what empires have always done in history, you know, from even African empires.
Exactly.
That's what they do. When they go out and see to find new lands to conquer, you know.
And but this is where we are today.